Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Christensen, and this is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, a gathering place for fellow fiends the world over to discuss all things freaky and frightening. If you want to be part of the conversation, and I hope you do, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, maybe go back and check out some of our previous episodes, leave a comment, and most importantly, let us know the fright flicks you'd like to discuss in the future. That kind of engagement is exactly what we're looking for, and it really does make a difference. We're all about sharing the scare, and we want to hear from you. I was a relatively inexperienced viewer when I first encountered the original 1978 I Spit on Your Grave. As a result, while I understood the terrible situation that our main character Jennifer Hills, played by Camille Keaton, was in, the execution of the story itself couldn't get past the filter of my Hollywood-honed sensibilities, with its rough edges and middling makeup effects keeping me at a distance. Later, as I consumed more independent and outlaw cinema, I revisited the film and was not only more affected, but markedly more impressed with what writer-director Mayor Zarki had been able to capture. Like the child who shies away from the bitterness of coffee, yet later grows to appreciate a double espresso, my tastes have either sharpened or dulled, depending on your opinion, to see past the flaws wrought by meager funds and limited experience. I now see I Spit on Your Grave, aka Day of the Woman, as a vital piece of exploitation cinema, a uniquely brave and underrated examination of the reality of rape and the fantasy of revenge. I'm honored to share the panel tonight with another stellar group of fans, so I'm going to bring in my panel and let's say hi to Art Ettinger, editor of Ultraviolent magazine, Adam Rockoff, author of Going to Pieces, The Rise and Fall of the Slasher Film and the Horror of It All, and superfan and all-around great human being, Kate Hansen, who's pretty much responsible for putting this group together, so you have her to thank and or blame. And let's discuss I Spit on Your Grave from 1978, celebrating its 45th anniversary. Thanks for coming on the show, everybody, and welcome.
Thank you.
The inspiration for the original I Spit on Your Grave was an experience that Mayor Zarki and his I think a business partner or friend, that they encountered a woman who had just been raped.
Yeah, him and his daughter, yeah.
It feels like a movie, the original. It feels like a movie where somebody's trying to grapple with this, but also trying to turn out some entertainment. And it's an interesting line to walk. I should mention this in the introduction, but Adam, you wrote the screenplay for the I Spit on Your Grave remake in 2010. And I'm curious, how did you come to the film, the original film, for the first time?
So my family, the family business was a chain of small food stores on the East Coast. And in conjunction with that, we owned a small video store. And if that doesn't make much sense to you, it didn't make much sense to me and still doesn't. Because I don't know if we funneled tapes into the stores or whatnot. I don't remember ever seeing them there, but we did. We owned a video store. It was far away from my house, though. It was over an hour, so we didn't go there that much. But one time when I was a kid, we went and there was a promotional item. I think I tell people that it was a cutout, like a cardboard cutout. I can't imagine them having done that, so I don't know if it's true or if it was just the poster, but it was of the iconic I Spit on Your Grave poster. And as a budding horror fan and a budding preteen, to see a woman with her scantily clad backside holding a knife, I mean, it just, what didn't appeal to me about it? So that was the first time I had heard of it or seen it in any capacity.
And Kate, how about you?
Well, actually, I have a little bit of an unusual relationship with this movie. I first watched it. I was dating, oh boy. Okay. I was dating a much older guy. And we watched this movie and then we watched Last House on the Left, back to back. But I got tired, so we stopped like halfway through Last House on the Left. And the next day our apartment was broken into, and like all of our stuff was stolen, including the DVD player that movie was in.
Oh my gosh.
So I never wanted to watch it again because it made me feel like bad juju. However, I watched it again this past week to freshen up because it's been so long. And I'm glad that I did. I hate that I'm like stubborn and do stuff like that. So that's what happened for me.
And Art, you have an extensive history with this film. You've written about it. You've interviewed Camille Keaton. You've interviewed Mayor Zarki. You've moderated panels. Where did you come to this film for the first time?
Well, when I was a kid, rather than giving a lame answer like police officer or fireman, I said I wanted to be a movie critic when I grew up. I was obsessed with sneak previews, which began the year I was born, 1975. And so it's been around for as long as I can remember. I was obsessed with Siskel and Ebert. Before I could read, I would look at the movie pages in both the New York Times and the Buffalo News, which we would get every day. And as soon as we got cable in the third grade, which for me was around 1983, the 83-84 school year, no one in my family likes horror movies, but I was allowed to watch whatever I wanted. So I started watching horror movies. I was already a big movie nerd. I still love all kinds of movies. But when we got our first family VCR in 1985, I was off and running. And sometime in the seventh grade, the 87-88 school year, a cousin of mine who's just 2 days younger than myself, we watched I Spit on Your Grave together. It was in every video store imaginable. It was certainly not a hard to find tape. Anywhere that had videotapes had it. And it blew my mind. You know, I had only seen, I think the only actually confrontational horror movie I'd seen before it was probably Last House on the Left. And those were my first two in-your-face confrontational horror movies that really seemed to be going for something different than what conventional horror goes for.
Agreed. And like you, I mean, I think I kind of came to this film as a connoisseur of movies. I was kind of like, well, here's this notorious movie. I've been seeing the poster for years and years and years. And I finally was like, well, I can't call myself a film fan unless I actually watch, these important. And I think this is an important movie. I think Adam, you and I talked off camera, but I think it's one of the most, notorious exploitation films out there. I mean, just the title alone, like it's right up there with Last House on the Left and things like that. Faces of Death, etc. And so I watched it, but I think I came to it with that kind of, that sense of being dared to, like, can you handle this? And later on subsequent viewings, I've been like, okay, I can appreciate it now on a deeper level. Like, I think like kind of the script and the dialogue and kind of this film is really strange in terms of how things play out on a narrative level.
And that's interesting. See, when I first saw it, I was just, I really didn't know much about it yet. And I think because of how common of a video cassette it was, I was completely unprepared for its content. I just thought it was a famous horror movie that I should see. I had no idea that it had the reputation it had. I hadn't read much, if anything, about it. I really didn't know what it was. I could tell from the box that it was a revenge story.
And how old were you when you saw it, Art?
Seventh grade, so 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I probably saw it in my 20s. So, I was coming to it much later in life.
I saw it like Art. I saw it when I was 10 or 11. And it was honestly, it was exactly what I thought it was. I had the box. I read the description. I knew rape was horrible and unspeakable. And I knew I was in for something, I don't want to be melodramatic, it's traumatizing, but I knew it was going to be awful. And it was a very, very unpleasant thing to watch.
I just want to know how a 10 or an 11-year-old unpacks that.
Like, I was savvy enough to know that this is movie making, and as awful as the act was, I mean, I still understood that this was an actress who they paid. I knew it wasn't really happening. And I just feel like, I grew up in suburban New Jersey. I just feel like we grew up, a lot faster back then. I rented the tape by myself. We jumped on our bikes and we went to the independent video store. We plunked on our $2-3 and she handed me the tape. So I mean, it does. It sounds crazy today. I have 2 kids, and if to think that they would have seen it when they were that age, it's shocking. But I did. It obviously didn't, scar, or maybe it did scar me. But different times back then.
Let me know later.
No, I always say to adults who don't let their children watch R-rated movies, I'm like, look how great I turned out. And, my parents, what's interesting, a lot of people have an older sibling or a parent who loves horror movies. I didn't. Like, no one in my family likes them. I just kind of came to them by my own. Now, when I had seen Last House on the Left, one of the things that stuck with me was that I knew how well known of a movie it was. I knew enough to know that, gosh, there must be like a really big audience for this movie. And what does that mean? Like what does that say about audiences? Am I going to become one of those people? The short answer was yes. I quickly, at a young age, went from, seeing confrontational horror movies and being like shocked or upset by them to reveling in their audaciousness.
Well, question, is this a horror movie?
Absolutely. I'm not
like what makes it not just a drama,
Sure. First of all, I can't stand that it's not a horror movie. People, they tend, like, anytime a movie's these days, anytime a movie's good, that it's not a horror movie.
Right.
Whereas, like, so there's different ways you can try to horrify people, but what's the main intention of I Spit on Your Grave? It's to shock the audience. It's an exploitation film. It is hyper violent, and the way that the story unfolds, it has jump scares. It has a lot of the elements that a conventional horror movie has. It has a jump scare, for example, when she's reaching for the phone,
right.
And the guy's
boot
boot
comes
comes
down.
Scare. And like that's a horror film trope, right? If its intention isn't to horrify, I don't know what its intention is.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Like, how is it just a drama? Because I gotta tell you, it doesn't feel like one.
I mean, it's basically a romantic comedy, right? I mean, that's
it's like just missing Paul Rudd.
Well, I mean, it was a date night for you, Kate. So
Right.
It was.
So I think actually, I mean, and I agree. I think it is a horror film, but I have read people like kind of like debating whether it is or not. I think it's very much influenced by films like Last House on the Left, and I that kind of you brought it up, Art. The idea of like this film it straddles that line of weird titillation and shocking, and the idea of like, who is this film for? Like we are here, like it's clearly laid out that our rapists are villains. We're never on their side. Right. We're never like relating to them. We're relating to Jennifer Hills. And yet there is that element of, I mean, because I don't know what audiences make of this movie. I have heard reports of people who are like cheering, like as she's being raped. And it's like, that to me is horrifying. That's scarier than anything that happens on screen is what happens, but that's the thing with art, right? You give it not art but art as a concept, right. Is that you hand it over to an audience and they are going to make of it what they will.
Yeah. And I don't know how much I don't want to speak ill of the dead or say that Ebert is lying, but that story that he's told ad nauseum about, being sickened in the theater because these people sitting next to him were saying, rape her, get her, do it harder. Again, I don't know if that's true, if it's just become, apocryphal.
Well, I mean, the fact is that, everybody on this panel believes rape is wrong, and yet rape occurs. Like that's just undeniable. It is a fact and I don't know that I understand the mind of someone who commits sexual assault, but they're clearly out there. And so they are probably looking at this film through a different lens. And, like that to me is an interesting concept on its own. Is like, again, Art, kind of going back to you, like the idea of like, who's this movie for and how do they quote enjoy it? Adam, you and I asked him, I was like, do you like this movie? He's like, does anybody really like this movie? And I'm like, well, I know Art likes this movie. So
I adore this movie. and I could watch it any day of the week. It puts me in a very good mood. I love this.
Right.
And can you talk to that, Art? Like what do you love about the movie?
Well, I don't know what it says about me from the get-go about why I gravitate towards such extreme entertainment. I like all kinds of movies, like I said, but I now the longer I've been a viewer of confrontational cinema, I just think the audaciousness is just something to be celebrated, and the fact that this movie has reached such a wide audience and now is like a film franchise is just like maybe global capitalism isn't so bad, like I'll be at the grocery store wearing my spit in your grave t-shirt, and some like middle-aged soccer grandmom will walk up to me and be like, I love that movie, or like I remember seeing that movie at the drive-in. Like millions and millions and millions of people have seen this. Is not like an obscure movie, right? I think that the audaciousness of the movie, the fact that it is willing to be as explicit as it is, the way it toys with the audience. One of the most effective scenes in the movie with a big audience is the scene where she pulls out the gun and then seemingly like she decides to hook up with him consensually and like drops the gun, and like audience is like, oh, come on, because they don't understand like what's going on yet. It's really effective. It really toys with the audience in a profound manner. And the bathtub scene, the crowd goes wild. They do.
Yeah. So I would like to talk a little bit about the movie itself, because we're presented with, Jennifer Hills at the beginning, where she comes out of an apartment where she has a doorman, somebody who loads her car, her baggage into the car. So we get the idea that she has some money. She goes to the gas station. She asks for high test, like she tips her doorman. Like when she talks to Matthew, when he's dropping off the groceries, he asks if she has a boyfriend. She says, I have many boyfriends. So it's like, this is clearly a liberated, woman who's in charge of her own life, and she's uninhibited. She goes and just immediately goes skinny dipping the second she arrives. And it's like we get a lot of information about this woman through action, which I really like. I like the fact that it's not about, being told who she is. We learn who she is through action. And then, she has her interactions with the guys at the gas station. And I think this is interesting, is that they're a goofy group. They're not immediately like creepy, except for, Johnny's a little, like he's clearly hitting on her. But the other guys are just like hanging out, like playing their game with the knife. And I think that what I like about this movie is the surprises. Like you said, Art, the way she goes about having her revenge is not what we expect. And as an audience, we're just like, what are you doing? I like the fact that the revenge doesn't happen in the order that you would think it would. Like you would think that you're going to get the worst guy last. Yep. I mean, that's just Hollywood convention, is that so Johnny clearly has to be the last one you kill.
Right.
But no, Matthew's the first one. And you're like,
well,
wait.
And what's like extra warped there is people say that this movie has no intentional humor. I would say that the line where she says, you came super fast, Matthew.
You came super fast. Yeah.
I was just curious, like is there a hard answer on what's going on with Matthew?
It is fairly well established that Matthew is what we now refer to as intellectually disabled.
Okay.
I always assumed that too, Kate.
Okay. Because I don't like assuming it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I do, but I also want to like just confirm with the masses before we all like move on.
Yeah. That's one of the things, actually. It's so funny that having seen it now so many times, that bothers me. The fact that, and we could talk for literally hours about the purpose of him being that way is, but I'm not saying he wasn't culpable, and I'm not saying he didn't get what he deserved, but I would have had, I guess, a better taste in my mouth if all four guys were, quote unquote, and we never use this word anymore either, but normal. And if none of them were mentally challenged.
One of the more influential aspects of this movie is almost every movie to follow afterwards that involves a gang rape has one of the members of the gang have an intellectual disability, including a movie like Boys Don't Cry, you know? And I'm watching Boys Don't Cry, and I'm like, oh, this guy is, you know, has a low IQ. Where'd they get that idea from, you know? Oh, maybe they saw I Spit in Your Grave.
Well,
like, I think it's true in The Accused. It's true in, like, so many movies with a gang rape. You have, like, the one guy who's a little slow.
But don't you think that, like, I mean, Krug's kid in Last House on the Left, I mean, he's clearly like a little off. I wouldn't say he's off to the extent that Matthew is in this film, but
he's a junkie though. He's like, that's his thing, is he's like a drug addict.
Yeah.
And so he's along for the ride because he needs dope.
But I think it's a similar dynamic.
Yes,
absolutely.
You know, and actually, if we can jump really quick to the remake, Adam, because that was something I thought that there's a lot more nuance to the Matthew character and his involvement in the rape, in that they flat out say, if you don't do this, we're going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really strong element to incorporate, because it makes him, because he still gets killed, you know, and there's even more kind of ambivalence about whether he deserved it or not. There's a lot of things I like about the remake.
So
and
this
and I go back and forth.
This answer sucks, and I apologize in advance. But the truth is, and I can't believe I'm admitting this, I've seen the film once at the premiere. My remake. I just don't like to see things that I don't like. Any dialogue that I didn't write, I cringe, and any dialogue that I did, I'm embarrassed for. So honestly, I could speak about writing the remake and what led to it and stuff, but the film itself, I really, you know, cannot speak to. I will say that I was cognizant even back then that I did not want to make him a mentally challenged person like in the original, because that to me was one of the most awful parts. I mean, yes, the violation of Jennifer is unspeakable, but there's also, in some small way, a little bit of a violation of Matthew as well, because we all know these three guys are hardcore, are bad guys. They're rapists. They're evil. Matthew would not have done that if it wasn't for them pushing him in that direction, for sure.
But in the final product, the way the remake plays, he still comes off as intellectually disabled. Agreed?
Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it was... I have to ask a question. I don't mean to switch the subject, and you can edit this however you like. Did you write the line "Pretty Little Show Horse"? Is that you?
Yes.
I liked it.
I
liked it. I'm not a big fan of that movie. I like it. I think it's the weakest of all of the I Spit in Your Grave movies, but I liked that line a lot. I thought that was.
I like that whole show horse theme throughout. We know a lot about that person who is using that language,
right? But it's also a little bit more telling than showing, which you had
praised
the original for. But but a really cool line for sure.
Thank you. Adam? So now we know Art doesn't like my remake. He doesn't like my poster. He doesn't like my children.
This is classic Art, though.
No, and I didn't
That's how he reels
you
in.
I said it was my least favorite. It doesn't sound like you like it all that much. I drove all the way to Detroit to see it in 35 millimeter when it opened.
Oh, wow.
I was very excited. And I'd already seen a bootleg of it beforehand, but I went and did it that way because I thought it was historically important to do so. So no, I mean, and I love the remake trilogy. Like I'm not anti-remake.
Well, the thing with the remake is I like the fact that it addresses certain things, like that initial intimidation scene in the house, I think is really effective. I think it's really well done, and it doesn't feel cartoony in the way that some of the scenes feel in the original. I feel like it feels a little more grounded. It feels a little more real. And I love the introduction of the sheriff. And that's I like that surprising character. And I think, Adam, you've talked before that you wanted to make it so that there were actually 5 to match the poster tagline. because it's only four. It's only
Right.
four in the original, and on the poster art, it's always been like she's chopped and burned 5 men. And he's like, where'd the other guy come from?
Exactly. That's funny.
My good friend Louis Justin, who runs Massacre Video, he called me out of the blue one day. I answered the phone, and without skipping a beat, and without saying even hello, he just says to me, "I think there's some juries in America that would probably convict her." And then he hung up. Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was a pretty funny phone call.
Is the film empowering? Do you think it's more upsetting than it would be for us three? I mean, it has to be a different experience, or am I overanalyzing it?
No, you're not. It's actually, I think that's part of why I avoided watching it for so long. I watched Cannibal Holocaust. Street Trash is one of my favorite movies. Like, I like gross, I like scary. But there's a lot of this movie feels like shitty, scary dreams that I have. Like, where like it's like you're like, wow, I am absolutely outnumbered, and like I'm in a weird place, and I'm indebted to stay here for an extended amount of time. Like there's so many like anxiety elements in the movie that add up over time that it's like that didn't happen to me. Like that movie didn't happen to me, but like I can pretty viscerally feel it. Like it's I can't imagine even for Camille just acting it. What it's been like people talking to her about that for so long.
It's interesting. I've sat with her at many events, and she does seem, her fan base skews slightly more female than other people I've sat with. She has a lot of female fans. The movie has a lot of female fans, and I think there's a lot of people who do find the movie empowering. I'm not speaking for them. I just objectively can see that she has a shit ton of female fans, and the movie has a lot of fans. Plus, I live with, and I'm in a relationship with a woman who loves rape revenge movies. So
I edited a book called Hidden Horror back in 2013, and one of the essays was on I Spit on Your Grave, and it was by B.J. Colangelo, who's also in Terry Zarki's documentary. But she talked about how this was a healing experience for her watching this film following her own assault. Again, as you said, Adam, I can't watch it through that lens. I don't know what that experience is like. And I think that was kind of what I was talking about, early on, where it's like who this movie is for. There's people are going to get different experiences from it. And that's why, I'm not a big fan of like just shutting a movie down as Ebert and Siskel were trying to do. I'm like, no, you have to let the audience decide for themselves what they're going to take away from it. And you shouldn't be trying to control A, what they take away, or B, taking away from them.
I think it's important when you have a movie like this. It's almost like when it's for nobody, it's for everyone that will listen. Because I think that this would appeal to a broad range of people, but definitely not my fucking dad. So like I know that like there are people that could listen and that this would appeal to, that like are maybe Christian or whatever. But like I just know that there are some like really closed off. Oh God, I hope he doesn't watch it. Hey Dad, I'm on a podcast. Don't tune in. Sorry. You told me not to watch Ren and Stimpy. Here we are. What happened?
So Adam, how did you come to write the screenplay for the remake? Like, how did that?
So I wrote a movie in 2008 called Wicked Lake, which was a rape revenge movie. And the producers hired me to write a sequel to one of their earlier films called Flesh for the Beast, which was called Flesh for the Beast 2 in the history of, fantastic sequel titles. So that never got made, but I sent the script to Mayer. I read that they were remaking it, and just literally out of this is one of those stories. I wrote Lisa Hansen, the producer. She actually sent it to Mayer, and I said, "Look, I know you're interviewing, established writers who are far better than me, but I know this movie quite well. I've written some stuff in the past. Can I send you a sample?" She was kind enough to say yes. I sent it to her. She sent it to Mayer. He loved it, and then we were off to the races. I mean, the reason that I used a pseudonym is because of that movie Wicked Lake. I always use this joke, but it's very true. Wicked Lake came out, and it was worst reviews in history. Everybody hated it. And it's surprising because the people who worked on it were very talented. So I don't want to badmouth it, but the worst reviews ever. So I make the joke, if you write one shitty rape revenge movie, it's still a huge accomplishment because you got a movie made. How many people can do that? But
Right.
if you write two shitty rape revenge movies, then you're just a bad writer. So that's why I use the pseudonym.
Well, and for years, because Adam had told me and I couldn't tell anybody. And I found out just like Adam texts me and like goes, no, it's on IMDb. Everybody knows. I'm like, shoot, I've been holding on to this secret for 13 years. So it's nice to be able to talk about it. But I didn't realize you hadn't actually watched your movie very often.
The remake, I watched it at the premiere, and that's it.
I feel like you should probably get kind of fucked up and treat yourself to watching that again.
You're probably right.
I think you deserve watching it.
You're probably right. But rather than talk about my movie, I want to go back to something that what Aaron said about who the fans are for this movie. I have to say, as much as I respect I Spit on Your Grave, and I love talking about it with you guys and analyzing things like the cinematography and everything like that and the plot. But it is not one of those movies. I'm fortunate enough to work at home as a writer, so I'm sitting in front of my TV and I always have to have something on in the back. I must have watched Rosemary's Baby 1,500 times, The Exorcist 1,000,000 times. I would never think to put on I Spit on Your Grave in the background.
Holy shit.
We live different lives.
Right.
I know. I just love that because I also Rosemary's Baby is my go-to movie. That's hilarious. Rosemary's Baby and Return of the Living Dead are my two background go.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, one of the things I did want to ask about, Adam, because this is one of the things that's it's very different from the original to the remake, is that after Jennifer is assaulted over and over and over again, in the original, we stay with Jennifer. Like we watch her heal, we watch her try and bring herself back together. Mm-hmm. We watch her go to the church and ask for forgiveness. Like all of this, we really are staying with her. Whereas in the remake, like she does that trust fall into the water and kind of disappears from the movie for 20 minutes while we just hang out with the assaulters, like worrying about whether they're going to get caught or not. And I thought that was an interesting take, but it's not necessarily one that I loved because I liked being connected to Jennifer. And I felt like there's no mystery to it. Like who else, of course, is going to be killing these people?
It's a boring answer, but it's the honest answer, purely commercial choice. I remember this discussion. The producers, and Mayer might have even been involved at that point, didn't think, and I don't disagree. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but I don't disagree with their thinking. We couldn't have that 10 to 15 minute period of nothing happening. Today's audience just wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't go for it. Whereas when Mayer was making his movie, he was an independent pioneer. He could do anything he wanted to, and he didn't have to answer to anybody.
In the original, there's some dispute over whether or not Jennifer is conscious of what she's doing or if she kind of becomes a little bit crazy and sort of loses her mind a bit. And I think that in the remake, I think that the way that Sarah Butler plays that character, it seems like there's a definite element of she's like unhinged, like she's kind of gone a little bit crazy. And they certainly go with that full throttle in I Spit in Your Grave 3, which I loved. But it's like, was that intentional that she's like kind of crazy in the second act?
No, it wasn't. I think it was a performance thing or a directorial thing. I will say, and then we can talk about the other films. I'm getting tired of talking about mine. The one thing I wanted to do, and the one thing I don't like when people analyze this movie, and they absolutely are free to say this. A lot of analyses of the film have said, and it's the same analysis people make with Last House and movies of that ilk and Hills Have Eyes. They try to make a comparison by saying the purpose of this movie is to show that if something terrible happens to you, there's always something that can make civilized people turn uncivilized. And it asks the question, is the person who seeks out vengeance just as bad as the perpetrators? And not only do I not feel that way, I really wanted it to make clear in the film that as awful as Jennifer's revenge is, there's five villains in this film. and only 5. The people who did that to her. I never believed in that if you take vengeance into your own hands, it's, it's a bad thing, and you should be equated with the perpetrator. Because, not to get personal, but if something like this happened to my wife or daughter, God forbid, what happened to the people in those movies would be considered child's play compared to what I would do to them with my own 2 hands. So when I wrote it, literally when I typed it, I pictured in my mind this was a woman who has been, to quote the poster, brutalized, beaten beyond recognition, and she wants to mete out justice to the people who deserved it. That was my only intention.
Is that weird for you to like? It's kind of like it was run through like Google Translate.
What?
Like your script? Like, is that weird? Like that? Like someone else was like, and like she goes crazy. Like...
No, because filmmaking more than any other art is so collaborative. I mean, once I turn the script, even when the script is locked, it never looks like I imagine. The characters don't act like I want them to. The direction isn't what I. Sometimes it's better. Oftentimes it's better. I actually think the director, Steve Monroe, did a hell of a job. I thought he directed the shit out of this, and he made it better than the movie, better than I ever could have done. But it's not. I've written now. Over 50 TV movies, and none of them turn out like I have in my mind's eye. That might be just me, or it might be, or other writers might feel the same way too.
My one dabbling in thinking about writing a screenplay, I wanted to write a contemporary Last House knockoff, because Last House on the Left knockoffs are like one of my favorite subgenres of movies. I adore them. I think they're wonderful. And I wanted to create a contemporary one. And then the movie Chaos came out. I don't know if you all saw the movie Chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And what was absolutely depressing to me was 9 out of 10 of my ideas ended up in that movie. It was like, they did not talk to me. I know Sage Stallone, or I knew Sage Stallone, but those people did not talk to me, like down to like one of the girls was African American, one of them was white. There's so many of the details in that movie were exactly how and so it's like, I guess I'm not gonna create my Last House knockoff now, but
did you like
Chaos?
Chaos?
It's Chaos. What's that?
Did you like Chaos?
I loved it.
I was one of the few defenders of it, because I was like, if only they hadn't gone out saying that it wasn't a Last House on the Left remake. I was like, guys, it's so obviously, what are you talking about? Like, I think it would have been received better, similar to the 2010 remake and the 1978 film. Like, I feel like it addresses some issues that I had, and I think it improves on the original in some ways. And then there are times where it falls short. And so I feel like I would never want to choose the 78 I Spit on Your Grave over the 2010. I like both of them, and I like them for different reasons. But let's bounce forward to your favorite of the franchise, Art, which is the I Spit on Your Grave 2 from 2013. It's an interesting film in that the remake obviously is going to cover the same ground. We're going to see that same story. Whereas I Spit on Your Grave 2 is basically a completely different rape revenge scenario, and that's basically all it is. It's 15 minutes of setup, and then the rest of it is rape and revenge.
Yeah. So going back to why we like these movies, if the intention of the original I Spit in Your Grave was to upset the audience, I Spit in Your Grave 2 is made for people like me. It's made for people who already know that they like confrontational movies, not unlike the movie Murder Set Pieces. I don't really think I Spit in Your Grave 2 is designed to upset people. It's more like a roller coaster ride for deranged viewers who revel in the audaciousness of extreme horror. I will defend I Spit in Your Grave 2 tooth and nail, except for that fucking sucked out color look. But it's that good of a movie that I give it a pass for that, which is really hard for me because I hate that
That's
look.
so crazy to me that bothers you. I check out and I don't even see it.
Wow.
It may as well be black and white. It's almost like I accept it as stylized, and then my brain doesn't see it anymore.
I was gonna say, Adam, what was when you saw 2013 the Spit in Your Grave 2? what are your feelings on it? Because I know I shared my review with both of you.
Yeah, as I said, I thought your review was an excellent review. I didn't agree with it. I am more in the camp of Art. I liked the film. I thought everybody did a fantastic job. I did not like it as much as Art, which would be hard to do. But for a sequel and for what it was, I thought it was really, really good. That's a real critical analysis. Really, really good. But it was. I liked it for what it was. I did.
Art, actually, it was your review in Ultraviolent that helped me have a different perspective on it. That it is over the top and it is supposed to be a cartoon. There's a part of me that just goes, is this something that should be treated cartoony, like this subject matter? Because I mean, what I like about the original is that even if Miyazaki intent is to make an exploitation movie, you know, he still has the vestiges of a morality tale to it,
and an art film in some respects. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't play by the normal Hollywood rules. I think it does a lot of things different, and I really appreciate that. And then, of course, I'm looking at the remake, and I'm like, well, okay, it's going to hit similar beats. It does different things. But when we get to 2, that's when I go, it spends 13 minutes before she gets assaulted for the first time. And I'm kind of like, I don't get to know her at all. And these her bad guys are just bad guys. Like we see in the original and in the remake that, you know, these are family, you know, they have families, they have lives, and they're also capable of these dark deeds. Whereas in part 2, they're just straight up bad guys. They're just bad guys. And then, you know, it's kind of like she's an innocent and they're bad guys, and rape and revenge ensues for, you know, an hour and 20 minutes.
There's like an honesty to the idea of like, oh, you like rape revenge? You want to see rape? You want to see revenge? Here you go. And this is maybe off topic. It is very off topic. As someone who's first generation and has a bunch of zany Eastern European relatives, I love the fact, you know how so many movies are shot in Eastern Europe and they pretend like it's like, you know, Canada or the States. You know, like this one, they're like, let's just make these guys Bulgarian. Why not? You know? And like, I thought that was actually like a very inventive choice.
Well, and that is truly my favorite part of that movie is the reveal, is because it's like, oh, wow. I mean, you immediately, like, the logic of police start knocking on the door and you're like, wait, what? How did that happen? But it's a great reveal that no one's coming to help her.
If you can just call the police and they can save the day, then you have no story, right? So you can't, you have to have bumbling police in horror movies, or else like you could just call the cops and the movie will be over, right? So that's like a trope that is never going to go away. And
well, I mean, it's also pretty authentic in terms of, you know, like sexual assault. Like, you call the police and things don't get resolved. And
well, absolutely. So there's two sides. There's like two aspects of that. Number one, there's that aspect of it, and then there's number two. I think almost anybody with a brain on any side of that issue would agree that the legal system has not done a particularly effective job of dealing with that or any other social problem.
You were approached to write the sequel, right?
I wasn't approached. I wrote it. It's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was different, or what was your sequel?
Totally different. And I have to say, I would have liked to write the sequel because it would have been, you know, just a paying screenwriting job. But the script that they went with, they said, I forget the backstory, but they were handed it, and the owner of the company loved it and wanted to do it right away. My take was more of a Most Dangerous Game scenario. It was 4 high class, high end call girls, and they were sent via limo to this compound to service wealthy people, and they realized relatively quickly they weren't there just to have sex with the men. They were there to be killed. And then 2 of them, or 1 of them, I forget how it ended up, but survived and took her revenge on these wealthy perverts.
So it wasn't there. Jennifer Hill's character wasn't brought back.
No. In the original script that I wrote, the first film was supposed to be, she writes a book of her experience, and she goes to see her agent in a restaurant, And she says, so what'd you think of the manuscript? And the agent's like, I loved it. It was powerful, but nobody will ever believe it. And then Jennifer smiles to herself and she reaches into her pocket and she takes out the sheriff's badge and leaves it on the table and then walks away. And that's how it ends. That's not how it ends, is it, Art?
That is not.
That's not how it ends.
Okay,
But it sounds like a couple of those ideas may have been lifted for Mirror's direct sequel, Deja Vu.
I was just going to say.
Okay.
Wow, congratulations.
Interesting.
Because she wrote a book, like it's centered. There's a scene in a restaurant near the beginning, one of the weakest scenes of Deja Vu.
We're all sort of disgusted by the rape. There's no, it goes without saying, but is there a moment, because there is for me, that's almost extremely, additionally upsetting and or just weird and that isn't meant to be. For me, it's when I was going to give you an example, but go.
Yeah, you go. No, you go. I want to know what you're saying. No, you.
So the thing I'm talking about is when we see Johnny's wife for the first time, and she's at the fact that he has a wife. Yep. To me, that blew me away, because even in my 10 or 11-year-old mind, you see these rapists and rape is bad and they're monsters, and then how to sort of understand that he was also a husband. I couldn't reconcile that. It really fucked me up.
I feel like, but that's like that kind of dude, like that dude to me, like, is it just like a narcissist? That's like the guy, that's like the third guy that you date before you like meet your real husband. Mm-hmm. Like, and I hate that guy. I hate that guy. Mm-hmm. And he sucks and he pisses me off. For me, I think the scariest part of that movie is the harmonica bit. Mm-hmm. Because it seems like it could be hokey. And I think that there's actually a lot of like fear for that in me. The fact that he's doing this kind of like silly song and like she's walking into this shit and like basically submits because she's like, I mean, what do you do? I can't imagine that shit on the rock. Like,
right.
Oh my God, all those dudes suck so bad. I gotta say, I think Matthew is my least favorite. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he's supposed to be. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel bad for him. I fucking either way. But this dude he makes me so mad.
He's one of the reasons I wasn't able to buy into the film the first time around, because I think his performance is so theatrical.
Eddie Deason.
That I never quite buy him as a character. And
right.
And you need to have, like, I really like the performance in the remake. Like, I feel like that feels like a more grounded performance. It feels more real. I can go for the ride easier. I feel like that, because of the rough edges around the first film, I think it requires a little bit more of investment on the audience's part. You have to be willing to forgive some of the things in order to go for the ride.
I
don't feel like that's the case with the remake. I feel like it's all done well enough that I'm able to just buy into it and go.
When we watched the Speed Your Grave remake for the first time, Alana and I, she could not believe that in the remake they still had one of the guys being intellectually disabled. She was like, it's like more tasteless now than it was then.
It's not necessary. It's not necessary at all. You could have still had that peer pressure working.
But if there's a gang rape in a movie, one of the dudes is limited. Like, I think that just seems to be like, since I Spit in Your Grave.
By the way, that kind of actually pisses me off. I just want to say, because that actually seems like a safety mechanism to me.
Oh, absolutely.
It is. Absolutely.
That seems to me like sure. Oh, there's something wholesome about this, and like this person's holding that, but that they're like kind of willing to give it away.
I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think that you can, and I think that's what we see with the character of Johnny, what we see with the character of the sheriff, is that they do have these two sides of them, well, where you're able to compartmentalize. And
well, Johnny's the vet, and that's like, Johnny's like the deranged vet. Like, that's like a trope of that time period, post-Vietnam, and like, maybe that's why he's so fucked up. Like,
I never realized that, actually.
Yeah, he says he's a Marine at one point. Like, that's I get this like info dump.
It never stuck in my mind, and I never saw that as either a justification, an explanation, or anything.
No, right. He doesn't seem like a crazy vet, like like he's not that cliche.
Like combat shock.
Yeah. If we can talk really quick about the third film, sure. Because it does continue the story of Jennifer Hills. There is an assault in part 3. But it is certainly less about that, and it's more about Jennifer becoming kind of an avenging angel.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting direction to take the character.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like just another rape revenge movie. It feels like it's an evolution of a character.
Well, what's interesting that, like, I think the idea, of course, is she's already been raped, you know, but then the question is, will an audience accept a rape revenge movie that without much rape? Kind of like Chaos is a rape revenge movie without much revenge. And I thought it worked incredibly well. Like it wasn't until afterwards that I reflected on, oh, wait a minute, like this wasn't structured like an ordinary rape revenge movie.
Right.
It also, there were whoever the screenwriters were are heavily versed in like feminist theory about rape and there's all sorts of like lines pertaining to various various writings on the subject and concepts and
I like the fact that they actually dug into that, and that there's an encounter group and there's frustration voiced, genuine frustration with it isn't as simple as you get raped, you get revenge. Like that's just not how the world works. And I think that's why the original film is satisfying on that level, is that there is that sense of justice being meted out. And I think that's what's happening in part 3, is that we're seeing somebody trying to deliver justice in an unjust world.
I have no evidence of it, but I think that the friend character was
Marla
was conceptually, she was supposed to be Gemma Dollander's character, maybe that the women from parts 1 and 2 were supposed to unite in part 3. I have no evidence of that, but that's what it felt like to me. And that would have been awesome.
I thought some of it was silly. I thought some of the dialogue, I thought some of the dialogue was silly. Instead of this broken woman who has to go through an ordeal and then becomes whole again by vengeance, she became cartoonish to me. There were some fine scenes, the blowjob, and
good.
It was great. I mean, I like to be shocked that way, and it was shocking looking at it from sort of a special effects. I thought that was crazy. I'm like, wow, they went there and they actually did it, and they didn't do it in a subtle way like in Last House. You actually see the prosthetic in her mouth, you see her bite, you see the blood, and it was crazy. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
But I actually like part 2 better than part 3. And she became a little bit too superhero-y for me, as opposed to in the original.
Well, part 2 though, I mean, like she must weigh like 85 pounds, and it's like she's throwing these guys around in the toilet. And I'm like, what?
Fine, Aaron. But in part 1, when she hoists him up in the tree, did you ever try to hoist a grown man up?
Well, I mean,
by a rope.
I absolutely thought that in the original. I'm just like, wow, she is, because that's not how that works.
Right.
It's like Sarah Butler in the I Spit Your Grave remake. We were talking about this the other day. The way that they try to tell you that she's strong is she jogs. She's fit. There's like a clip of her running. So she must be strong enough to do these things. I feel like Gemma Dollander looks a little bit tougher than Sarah Butler, although somehow my opinion of Sarah Butler, between her performance in the third one is way more captivating. She's really, really, really good in what's a pretty ridiculous movie, right?
But I remember you saying that though, Art, that she's because she doesn't do superhuman feats of strength in the remake. The most you could say is that she tied up a guy and strapped into a chair.
That's not that easy to do. I don't know.
Kate's like, how does he know that?
I liked how confident he was. That's all.
Well, I mean,
it's just not that easy to do.
We're not going to tour the basement here, but
when I initially saw the remake, I was kind of like, I think I'd had that idea of the saw traps in my head. And it's actually not as intricate as I imagined, as I remembered it being. The most intricate it gets is the fish hooks in the eyelids. And I actually love the payoff on that with the splashing the fish guts on. And I was like, Oh man, that actually, because I was like, what the hell's that going to do? You know, who wants fish guts in their eye? And then you're like, oh shit.
So Johnny in the remake wasn't supposed to be castrated. We were thinking, I was thinking to myself, he was castrated in the first one. How can you up a castration that is arguably the most, graphic, awful castration on film? So I had always heard of the South American fish called the candiru, and what the candiru does is it swims around in South American waters and it's attracted to urine, and is a parasite. And when it finds the urine, it swims into the urethra of any animal, mammals, and it extends its spines so it lodges itself in the urethra of an animal, and you can imagine how painful that is. So we were going to have one of the guys, or I don't know which guy, be like sort of a rare animal dealer, and he had all these disgusting tanks in his house of like reptiles and amphibians and fish, and there were going to be candiru in there, and that's how she was going to torture him. She was going to put him naked in the water, and this candiru, was going to swim into his penis and just expand. And they liked it. They're like, this is really creative and it's really real. And then when they saw the budget that they had, they're like, there's no way we can pull this off.
Well, and I feel like that works better on the page.
You're probably right.
Than it might
You're
on
probably
screen.
right.
Like there's something about her bringing out the shears, and you're like, okay, here we go. Let us leap finally to Mayor Zarki's belated follow-up, 2019's I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu, which I think is an unfortunate title because deja vu means the same thing all over again. And I'm kind of like, oh no, really?
God, I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm like, let's do I Spit in Your Grave all day, every day. Let's go.
Yep. Well, it's all 2.5 hours of it. I think that's it. It is a
ill-advised.
Yeah, I was kind of like, it's clear that I think Terry is Mayor's son is the editor on it, and he did not feel like killing any of his dad's darlings. I think
it's such a fun movie, though. It is like it is again like I Spit in Your Grave too. It's just mean for the sake of meanness, and I think a lot of fans of the original will get a kick out of it. It's overlong for sure, but it's so ridiculous in some just lovable ways. The new actress who plays the daughter character is quite interesting. I've seen her in other things as well. I think the movie works despite its ridiculous running time.
I don't know that it works because we spend so much time with the assaulters and with that family. And it's like, wait, whose side are we supposed to be on? I'm like, well, I don't need to spend this much time with these people because I'm guessing I'm supposed to be on the side of Jennifer Hills and her daughter. And so why am I going to spend this much time trying to relate to this twisted family? Then I'm like, wait, why?
They're not trying to have you relate to them. They're trying to show you how big a hicks they are and the ridiculous shit they say and do and think.
But doesn't that just feel like really easy? Like I feel like he doesn't go easy in the first one.
I don't
in the first one, I feel like we actually
40-minute rape revenge movie is easy. There's nothing easy about that movie. It's like ill-advised from frame A to frame Z, and I mean that in the most like. I was so nervous that this movie was gonna suck, and it just doesn't. It's just like and I'm not its only champion. Well, I know another person who's a good friend of mine who adored it was Joe Rubin, one of the heads of Vinegar Syndrome, and he actually saw it theatrically. He was at the premiere, but
so what was that premiere like? What was it like to have an audience sitting there for 2.5 hours going, oh my God, is this ever going to end?
But it's paced kind of well. Like, I didn't feel the running time. Like, normally, I'm not a fan of long movies. And if you're not Spike Lee or Kurosawa, you shouldn't make a long movie. Like, I agree. Like, or Scorsese. Or, like, there's a handful of people who do it well. But, Mir Zarki, throw him on the list. Throw him on the list. I think it's paced pretty well.
Oh man, yeah, I couldn't disagree more. It was such a tough sit. I will say that it does pull out an hour in. It pulls out one of the greatest surprises that I could not have anticipated, and I won't spoil it, but like I feel like that similar to the Spit on Your Grave 2's reveal, like I was like, holy shit, haven't seen that in a movie, and I really like that. For this Deja Vu, an hour into the movie, there's an event that happens, and you're like, holy crap, how could you have seen that coming?
But there's quite a few things in this movie. You must admit, there's quite a few times where you're like, I cannot believe.
Oh no, I don't believe a lot of this movie for sure. But I think it's one of the things that actually works, though, is the documentary. And Art, you've said that there may be some things that aren't entirely authentic.
Just a couple little facts and figures.
But I think that documentary is really solid. I think it's an affectionate look at a movie that doesn't get a lot of love, and it's told from a very human standpoint, coming from Terry, the son of Mayor Zarki.
I never believed the story, and when I interviewed Mir, I had to be one of the first people who was like, "You made that up, right?" Because to me, it just sounds like exploitation ballyhoo. Like, yeah, right. Like, and there were aspects of the story, the way he would tell it, that really did not sound true to me. I now believe that it's a true story. His daughter is very convincing when she talks about her memories of it. But it just sounded like a justification for this disgusting movie that some like exploitation director made up, that like he encountered this woman. I never believed it. And when I mentioned that to Camille, she was like, "Oh wow, no one's ever said that before. I always believed it." And Mir was like, he was pissed when I called him out like that. And he was like, "You can research it. You can go to this place to that place, and there's probably evidence of it." And
there's such a purity to that original film that's why I feel like it does come from a genuine place, that it feels like it's coming from someone trying to translate this idea of, if someone was raped, how would they address it? How would they address it? How would I address it? How would I like to see it addressed? And I like the fact that, again, this is not like, it's not the catch-all for every rape victim, but it is an attempt at, I think, digging into the complexities of it. Like, I mean, when she's riding away in her boat at the end, she's not Sally from Texas Chainsaw.
Right.
She's not shattered,
Right.
and but there is a sense of, there has been a cost of, in some way, like that she's not broken,
Absolutely,
but she's certainly lost something in the process.
No question about it. Yeah.
What's interesting about the concept of an exploitation film is, some highly respected cinematic works of art like Ganja and Hess can also be exploitation films because of how they were marketed. But like, I Spit in Your Grave, even when it was marketed as Day of the Woman, it was warning, the movie will shock you,
Well,
only a woman can, etc. Like, so,
that's marketing.
What was he exploiting? Was he exploiting this real life experience, or did this real life experience give him the nugget of an idea and be like, boy, that would make for a killer movie? Like,
right. I think he's trying to make a more serious movie than I Spit on Your Grave. I think like he was envisioning something.
Oh, I agree. I think he had pretensions of art in a way. Absolutely.
Pretensions of art, but it doesn't play out like a didactic message movie. It's not like that. It's not like, if it was, it would have had like, she goes to talk to the police and the police won't help her. Like there's not a lot of there's a lot of showing and not telling,
I like that she bypasses that though. Because I think that kind of acknowledges without saying that's how that goes. And I love that she kind of like just tackles it. And it's probably not the healthiest.
Right.
I mean, that absolutely would have been the conventional storyline.
And what they did what you did in the remake was you had the law enforcement character and her trying to get help.
Well, but she doesn't seek out that guy, though. I mean, like, she literally runs into him.
It's like everything's gonna be okay. The cops here, like,
yeah. I'm gonna circle back around. This has been an amazing discussion, like I knew it would be.
I'm just gonna ask the question and answer it. If if there are aliens and they came down to Earth and they said, give me the best representation of a song, of a piece of a food item, of a house, and they said an exploitation film, you'd be hard pressed to find a better example than I Spit on Your Grave.
Right.
And I think it's a film that continues it ages better than you would think it would. Like, I feel like it is held up in a way that it certainly is of its time, but I don't think, for better or for worse, certainly for worse, the message hasn't changed, and the quality of the fantasy element of the revenge, I think that hasn't changed either. Wanting to see justice done and taking matters into your own hand and meting out the kind of justice that feels just to the survivor of the assault.
Well, the Me Too era is producing a new wave of rape revenge movies. Probably the best so far has been Promising Young Woman.
Sure.
And Camille Keaton had her photograph finally in the New York Times in color, in an article about Promising Young Woman, where they acknowledged the roots of that film being in the rape revenge cinema of the past. But that's not the only movie. There was like Revenge from France and like
right.
MFA is another one. There's quite a few,
Right.
It certainly makes sense given the social issues that we're addressing right now.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. This is a great conversation. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to having you all on again to talk about things like, puppies and flowers. Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.